All right, we are back, and it's not a we today. It's not Professor Beth. She's off enjoying Vino Verde across the Atlantic Ocean. Well-deserved rest after a semester well done. So I get to pick the guest exclusively, and I have the pleasure of bringing on Jim Mitte from Turtle Hut. And what's interesting about Turtle Hut, unlike a lot of the big ad agency names that you're going to know, and there's a great story behind the Turtle Hut brand name. We're going to talk about franchising, franchise advertising. It's a world that I have been lucky enough to dabble in a couple of times. And I think that our guest right here on my right in my Brady Bunch boxes, Jim, is going to be a great resource. And I'm certain that we're going to have a wide-ranging conversation. But as always, Jim, when it comes to a businessman who started a business, and I've heard some really wild stories. There's a great story about the formation of Groupon and all these other businesses. I love that, kind of historical stuff. I wanted to start out because I know that you have a pretty fascinating beginning of how you ended up essentially as an ad agency. We'd love to hear a little bit about the background of Turtle Hut, and then we'll dive into some questions that I have for you.
I don't know if it's that fascinating. You're building up the question way too large.
Should we talk? Are you saying we should go back and talk about the population of Canada being within like 20 miles of the U.S. border? I don't know.
That was a pretty interesting conversation as well. The quick answer ultimately is, back in 1999, I graduated with a marketing degree. I immediately started working for a local advertising agency, but it was all traditional media. I mean, the internet was just getting started.
Right.
And I had interned with them the summer before, and they really liked me, and I really liked them and their clients. So they made me a job offer after college and said, hey, we want you to come be the internet marketing director. And I said, director, like, huh? And they said, look, that's cool. Nobody knows what it is right now either. And you're young and seem really smart. You'll figure it out. Okay. And they said, so I'll tell you what, we'll give you 3 months. You don't have to meet with the client. Just go learn and figure it out. Day 2, I'm meeting with the biggest client, explaining the internet, talking like I have no idea. Like, what did you just put me into? It was so much fun and so many different levels.
In 99, I got to tell you, in 99, I was working for a big company, Meredith Corporation. And because I was a young guy, along with a couple other young people, they put us into a room and they were like, oh, you guys can be the internet team. And we started to discuss the World Wide Web. And what I knew about it, to be honest, was Yahoo. So
yeah.
it was search, at school, because I graduated college or whatever, it was always done through Yahoo, LexisNexis, kind of my first. So I guess it was natural to just find the young people and say, you know what you're doing. And now it's crazy because I have 2 digital native sons and they help me all the time. with all the social media. So anyway, so you're in 99 and you're a digital director right out of college.
Right out of college. Great little title. I got paid nothing. It was an advertising agency. I mean, I don't know. I couldn't afford anything. It was amazing. So did that for a while. And at some point switched to a full digital agency doing internet marketing. And 15 years ago, me and the founder of that just had a different way of looking at things. He was more of a developer, and I was certainly all focused on return on investment, marketing, and helping small businesses. So we split apart, and I went my own way with Turtle Hut. But the funny thing is, at the agency in 99, me and 4 buddies started a web hosting company that we called Turtle Hut as your protective shell on the internet. It was always kind of a little pet project. Never made a ton of money, but it was fun. Gave us a good reason to take a ski retreat for every year or something along those lines. Yeah. So when I spun off from my partner that was actually doing internet marketing, I said to my 3 buddies, I said, look, either way I'm spinning off, I'm doing my own thing. Obviously web hosting 15 years ago was not the highly profitable business that it doesn't appear to be now as well.
Right.
And so I said, obviously Turtle Hut's going to go by the wayside. I can either continue it in legacy and promise you any cool tchotchke I buy for the rest of my life, I will give you one.
I love that. You told me that at the show. You told me that you're passing out the tchotchkes, which I think is a fantastic idea.
So I gave them each back their $500 initial investment in Turtle Hut back in 99 when we started buying our first server. and they have a lifetime promise. Anything that I buy that says Turtle Hut on it, they get one of them. And so, yeah, for 15 years now, we've been operating as Turtle Hut, the internet marketing agency.
They don't get a piece of the Corvette though.
No, but I would let them drive it if and when they want to.
If they need it. Okay. All right.
Fair enough. We're still a good friends. So that's, yeah.
We're going to need an image of that, Jim. I want to pop that into the video. So from there, that's what we were talking about at the show. So you had started essentially web hosting, which was probably pretty smart. What year was that?
That was in 99 as well. It was about 3 months into my agency stint. Obviously, I was helping them figure out that these clients that needed websites to do anything else. So I was helping them procure websites, hiring web developers, project managing that, then trying to buy ads was really loose at that point. Right. A lot of search engine optimization, but these websites had to be hosted somewhere. So at that point, it was like, well, might as well host them at Turtle Hut. Might as well start this company. Everybody needs web hosting. So that's how we got our first server and co-located in a data center. And yeah.
And then into the world of franchise advertising. Talk to me a little bit about how you ended up in because I'm assuming it wasn't franchise, the first agency. You end up in the franchise business, and is that how it started?
Yes, correct. So we've been doing it for about 3.5 years, and a franchisor walked in our door and said, "Can you help me?" And I said, I guess maybe I could even fast forward before that, or rewind a hair. In my mid-20s, I bought a couple pizza franchises with some friends. And it was a bad idea in that case. We bought the wrong brand without good training, with the wrong managing partner. And I call it my MBA. I learned a lot.
Right.
So as I am doing internet marketing, I had a couple other franchisors walk in my office prior to this, and they would say, "Can you help me get more franchise leads?" And I said, "I can help you get more sales for your franchise, which will generate more leads." And they would say, "I don't want to talk to you." And I was really frustrated by that. So all of a sudden, this franchisor walks in my office about 13 years ago, and they said, "Hey, we have a big problem. Can you help me?" And I'm thinking, like, you're going to want me to get you franchise leads, aren't you? And I got screwed in the franchise. I don't know. This is a good idea.
Yeah.
And they said, "We have 60 locations. They're all using different websites. It doesn't match our brand. They're not getting good results. Can you help us build something that'll help them?" And I go, "You don't want help getting franchisees?" And they said, "No. As long as we make our franchises successful, we'll get more franchises." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, how can I help? Sign me up. Let's do this."
Yeah. and that turned into your first big client? Was that a big client, or was that like you didn't know how big it was going to be?
I didn't know how big it was going to be. I didn't realize everything we built from a systematic approach to how we can roll and scale out websites for them, how important that really was in the space. And like all good marketing agencies, we're terrible at marketing ourselves. So even after we built this amazing platform that we could grow and scale, we never were like, "Oh, how do we find more franchise systems to put this into?" So that, we've only been actively marketing ourselves in the space for a couple of years. We found a couple others to work with in between then, happenstance, but not actually like, gosh, we have the best platform out there to grow and scale localized websites to maintain 100% corporate control that exists out there, period. And yet we're not even telling anybody about it. So why aren't we doing that? So that's where you've seen me at shows now. It's about time to try to explain how our system can actually help grow and scale franchises.
And talk to, I've dabbled, and I would have been in the pizza franchise business, to be very clear, a little Roman figure who often will say things twice. I was thinking about two of those here in Jersey City. It was kind of that, and then another franchise business. So I had sold my business back in 2018 and was debating a franchise myself, which is how I ended up knowing the people that I know in the industry in general. What happened for me was interesting. I looked at it from across, obviously, quick serve restaurant all the way to auto business, all this kind of, I looked at a lot of different franchise models. The one overriding theme that I think people don't understand about franchises is, number one, a lot of people don't know that certain businesses are franchises. Like, I think it'd be surprising to know that your H&R Block or whatever, a lot of these tax service businesses are local franchises, right?
Yeah.
And what goes into this, right, is an interesting kind of blend of corporate control, right? So we're all familiar with the unbelievable consistency of McDonald's, right? And when I go to a McDonald's in the United States, I'm often amazed, across the country of just how consistent it is, and they keep a very strong control. They have really smart, obviously they've been doing it the best and the biggest for the longest time. But what I found in terms of my interest in franchise, this is the area that I'm interested with you, is you have a lot, you have a lot of pressure on you as the agency, I think, because you have multiple bosses, right? This is not just, the company, right? This is everybody's kind of looking at you. And if it were really big, if it were a huge company like a Yum Brands or something like that, I know there's a lot of other layers, but you're talking about local stuff. And I know, you've mentioned a couple of your clients and stuff like that to me. Is it like that? Is it similar to what I would have experienced, let's say, with a certain automotive chain or something like that, where, boy, there's a lot of opinion, right? And there's a lot of that going in.
It is the more you peel back the onion in the space, it is amazing to me how complicated it is. Because at the high level, if you're not in the space, you go, oh, I bought XYZ franchise. I'm going to follow their entire plan because that's what I bought. And if I do it, I should be really successful. But weirdly enough, these people that should be buying into a system and following it, a lot of times believe they have a better way of doing the system, or that corporate doesn't have their best heart in mind all the time. And so you end up with a percentage of these franchisees that get some version of jaded, that start trying to only, even go down their own path in some regard. And from the outside looking in, I would have never thought that exists. So,
yeah, I think that's what I was getting. It's interesting, right? There's much more to this than you think.
Yes. And so ironically, because I did own 2 pizza franchises in the early days, my managing partner's name was Roger. And I came to this store about, 6 months in, and all of a sudden he's like, here, try this. I'm like, that's really good. He's like, yeah, I made my own recipe for the dough and the sauce. It's great. I can't wait to start serving. And I go, what? You can't serve it? No, we have a specific brand that everybody's expecting it to made this way. You can make this and take it home all day long. That's fantastic. If you really like it, you can take it to corporate and tell them how much better it is, and they can rebrand it as a different pizza. But we bought a brand. We have to build the pizza their way every time. That's what everybody's expecting. And his look in his face was like, thought I was nuts. It made no sense. He's like, but it's better. I go, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the Big Mac's better or worse than the Whopper. You don't get to reinvent the Big Mac. You just don't.
Yeah.
And so there is that mentality. But then the flip of it is, if you look at the history of McDonald's, many of the best innovations came out of franchisees' ideas. But they didn't necessarily, as far as I know, start selling it themselves. I think they brainstorm with corporate.
That's true. Correct. And that goes with companies too. I've heard a lot of stuff about, I wrote a long paper about the Oreo cookie when I was in marketing school. And there was a lot of that kind of change, the ability of the people who were working for the company and helping Mark. But again, in a franchise setting, I can't even believe that was even debated by your partner, like slapping out a different Little Caesars pizza. Not a great idea. I think that they would have come right after me if I was like, hey, you know what? I got this better tomatoes here in New Jersey. Let's do that.
Yeah, it was the exact wrong way to approach it. But so I guess circling back to the bigger picture of your question, we see this all the time. We start with this website platform that we've built specifically for franchise and multi-location services to locally optimize and scale. And so I was just talking to a franchisor that was very interested in our product. And because they ended up with 130 locations, each one of which they gave access to their local sites, and each one of which hired some local SEO guy or their neighbor or something to add content and change it. And they ended up with broken pages, things that aren't showing right, wrong information, missing pages. And they said, I need to solve this. I don't know how to fix it. And now the irony here is I said, that's great. We built our platform in such a way that the franchisee does not have local control. We locally customize and optimize it based on the parameters you, Mr. Franchisor, and we agree upon make sense for their best well-being. There's rules and lines here. If you come to us and say, hey, everybody else is going to add, I got this green turtle behind me, green turtles as a new product, then we need to figure out how we're going to add the green turtles page to everybody's website, right?
Yeah, right.
But allowing them to make those changes and them adding green turtles doesn't fit anybody's best interest. So this particular franchisor then went back to their franchise committee talking about the new website platform, and he came back and said, I'm sorry you didn't make the top 3 list of vendors we want to talk to because our franchisees want control. And I said, that's great. We're obviously not a good fit, but what part of this process you just said tells you you're going to be any different after you invest in a brand new website again without the same system of control? So we build such a system so that it is locked down, that if Bob in Topeka, Kansas wants to add this particular thing on that page, my team as the account managers don't have the ability to do it because the system's locked down. My development team can roll it out with cooperation of what corporate says how we want to add this particular function. That's not to say, though, that if we want an about us where we take Bob's picture from Topeka, Kansas and put it there with Bob's story about why he got into, Little Caesars, that's great. If that's what corporate wants us to do, I think it makes a ton of sense. If it's local gallery of pictures, if it's they want their local technicians' photos, if they want their chief bio, whatever those things are. But collectively, we need to work together to build a system, which is what the franchise sold each franchisee, a system that is going to work consistently and effectively. And when you start allowing everybody to move away from that, which is what many agencies are doing, they're just allowing this free for all. And a lot of times, the marketing teams at corporate just let Bob get the little lips. I don't want to hear him complain anymore. Just do it for him. Do it for him.
Yeah, that's what I was getting. Yeah, that's right.
And they find themselves in this spaghettified mess, and Bob's not following standards. And then Topeka wants to do what Bob wants to do. And it just goes on and on and on, and spirals. And so, again,
it also kind of, I noticed it becomes a bigger issue, particularly when the franchises themselves can be sort of competitive. So if somebody is, creeping into the 5-mile radius or the 10-mile radius of his brother store, in this case, then there are more issues, right? There's a lot of political stuff. And I think that people don't realize it when they kind of ring the bell when they walk in the door of said franchise. And then the one thing I wanted you to discuss, another layer to this kind of, and I think you used the word spaghetti, which I love, is social media, right? So you and we grow up in not 99, you're really only dealing with, 1 or 2 streams of media, more or less, right? Search and display, sort of. Right. I mean, people don't realize
showed up eventually.
Video doesn't hit. And I've looked this up and ran it in my mind. And keep in mind, this is how my business really took off. Video doesn't really hit until the iPhone and the corresponding whatever Samsung device. I want to say it was like the 5th generation iPhone, the 5th series iPhone, and maybe the 7 series Samsung devices, along with the capabilities of the networks themselves. So AT&T, I think it was 4G, or it might have been 3G, and you could start rendering video. So video is not with us until 2013. And now Jim and Turtle Hut are faced with not just video, but the boom in social media. And I think I recently mentioned I was running Muscle and Fitness magazine for American Media. This is probably 2012, 2013, maybe. And I was confronted with the idea that there was a local, well, not a local guy, a national single entity creator who was selling a workout or a product. And he had more social media, right, than Muscle and Fitness magazine. So he had more Instagram followers, more Facebook followers, more YouTube views than all of Muscle and Fitness. And my advertiser, right, was like, well, I'm going with him. Yeah. So the pressure for you right, as an agency sitting in between this kind of, you have the franchisor, you have the franchisee, you have them kind of saying to the franchisor, I don't think they're doing a great job. And it's like, so how do you deal with that? What's the maneuvering, and what's the pressure from the social media world, which, TikTok has only been with us for what, 3-4 years, right? And in the lexicon, and yet you would think it's been around like Chevrolet at this point.
Yeah. So it's an interesting conundrum, and I think the easiest answer to the question is every industry is going to be a little bit different. That said, when you talk franchise and franchise system, I think maintaining the brand and still getting results is key. And so I believe that the franchisor needs to set boundaries in those cases,
right,
and needs to stay with those. Now, so that said, I'm not going to say, okay, locally they shouldn't have their own presence, or nationally they should only do, because every group is going to be different based on who their target is, what their messaging is. But if you want to, let's say you were a local, you were a drain cleaning franchise.
Yep.
Well, does it really make a ton of sense to have your franchisee posting about every drain that they unclogged in that small territory with their time and effort on a very small following, when it's a demand-based service that people only woke up today, my toilet's overflowing, I need? Their focus should be on delivering SEO and search engine advertising for the person that needs to solve that problem immediately. If you start talking about maybe some kind of local bakery that needs to have this community brand, then they might want to post the fact that we're having, St. Patrick's Day cupcakes today only to the local following. Both make sense in the right capacity. But I think what happens so many times is the new media's come out, corporate doesn't have a stance for it. They're kind of, let's see how it works for Bob and Sally, and now it's too big to rein in, versus strategically, what does this look like for our system, and where is the ROI? Because so many times when we were working with franchisees directly doing, let's say, Google ads, and they're talking about, well, I have to do all these Facebook posts and I do this Facebook ads, and they were similar business like that rooting company. Nobody woke up today and goes, oh, since I saw an ad about cleaning my drain, I need it clean today. So they would say, should I do this? And the answer is back is, well, you can do whatever you want with your time, but it wouldn't be worth your while to pay me to do it, which probably tells me it's probably not worth your time to do it. Focus on the efforts that are going to generate business for your demand, right?
Yeah, interesting. So,
because like, why don't you offer posting for us as a service? And I'm like, because there's not enough ROI if you had to pay me. You're never going to see a return on that investment, so I'm not going to take your money. But on the flip side, there are cases where it does make sense. So I think the brand needs to be far more in charge than, unfortunately, a lot of them are, in my experience. That somebody buying into a franchise shouldn't just be buying into, this is how you wash windows, and this is what truck you should buy, and this is the logo you put on it, and this is our online scheduling and routing system. That's all great. That's going to get me to clean windows and get me to the right job, right? It's going to allow me to know what to charge. You're going to teach me how to clean the windows. But so many times they didn't leave with, we give you the one-page website, and your marketing strategy is you need to spend $2,500 a month locally. On what? Where? How do I track it? Well, that's up to you. Just do it locally. So many times that seems to be the case.
But that's the point, though, right? Isn't that the point of a franchise, right? Like, so you got to the meat and the heart of it right there. The franchise kind of says, like, here, you need to spend 10% or whatever percentage it is. If it's a raw number, let's use 2,500. That's a great number. If I'm the franchisee, this is the part that I really. And again, like I know you're in it for long enough that I don't need to empathize with you, but I realize it's not an easy gig. And when you have a guy, right, who's looking at it going, well, I'm doing really, really well, and I'm spending my $2,500 a month, and I want to get bigger and bigger. How do I get bigger and bigger? And they watch a couple of YouTube videos and they see a few things, and all of a sudden they're trying to buy advertising on their social media, which I don't know if you have direct control over in this particular scenario. But in other words, like, that's what I mean. Like, I understand it from all perspectives. Like, I'm a franchisee and I think I can make more money if I do more advertising. right, then I'm gonna try to do that, but within the restraints of the franchisor's rules. And then you are only there more or less to maybe take the blame, right? Like, oh, well, there, I can't do whatever I want to be doing with this thing. It's that it's the brand. It's like, no. We're actually doing this the way that is within what you said before in the rules and the line, so that you don't waste your money, right? The worst thing for them to be doing is, right, like taking hundreds of videos of cleaning a drain, right? And then, and when they could be doing more work, right? Rather than sitting there videoing a drain cleaning is probably it's, you got to take the camera, you got to get your phone out, assume these people aren't walking in with a camera crew. So you're doing all that work, and what you're basically saying is, this is not the right way to be spending your marketing dollars. And that's where it gets really tricky, right? It's like, you're kind of like, I think you really need to listen to the professional, and they're in there cleaning the drains thinking, I want to make more money, Jim. How do I do that?
It would be a great problem to have if their only concern was, I have more advertising dollars to spend. Please spend them for me in the effective ways.
Right. Yeah.
But you're correct. Like twofold happens there. And the scenario you're talking about, great. So that guy now starts buying local radio spots. Okay, and maybe it works for him. That's great. He doesn't know how to measure it, but at least he's spending money because he's making more and more success and doing some branding activities. The unfortunate part is, generally what happens instead of that is they're told they have a $2,500 a month budget, and they're very flexible about how they enforce that if they do it all. And the local franchisee says, well, I joined the Chamber of Commerce and that cost me $250. That counts towards local advertising, right? And they're like, I guess. And I bought this billboard on the side of I-75, even though in cleaning drains, it's probably not going to produce much return. And that was $1,750. So that counts, right? Yeah, I guess. And then this guy showed up with Valpak, and I'm giving $10 off your next drain cleaning. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you're spending $2,500, and then 3 months later they go, I don't have any jobs. I can't afford to pay my royalties. I'm going out of business. But I did everything you told me I needed to do. I spent $2,500. Because in that case, the demand-based ads weren't what they should have been. They should have been doing demand-based ads, not branding activities with a billboard on the side of the road. So the franchisor doesn't provide enough rule sets to say, these are the things we should do. You need to do these things
so
first.
In theory, the billboard, the Valpak, this would be ancillary. You're basically saying, look, the franchisor lays out the rules, and I mean, we're picking on the poor drain industry, but why not? We'll keep it going. We could talk about transmissions. They're the same thing, right? It's a transmission blows up. It's a one-time event, right? You're making one phone call. In the case, we're not talking about pizzas, right? Pizzas happen all the time. We're talking about a very specific incident where you're likely to pick up your phone, hit a Google search, or even an open AI search. We would talk about that too, Jim. So here I am looking, and I just need somebody to come over and clear this drain, right? There's no chemical that I have that can break the drain cleaning, and I need this bathroom. So I understand. So I'm going to be at the franchisor, at the franchisor level. They're basically saying, Jim, what am I going to say to this guy? He went and he spent the $1,750 on the membership. He did this on that. And then you have to be like, no, this whole thing is Google. This is all search. Like, what are we doing? Like, why are we? So it really should be ancillary. If they want to do that, go ahead, spend that $1,700 on the billboard, but don't take away from your base business. And then all of a sudden find yourself out of business.
Yes.
And this is the tough part of being an agency.
Yes. In an ideal world, which doesn't exist, the franchisor comes to us when they have 5 locations and they say, what should my marketing plan be? Because when they got those 5 locations, the first and second and third are corporate owned. They've been doing this for 25 years. They don't even know how they got their first customer, and the internet didn't exist. Yeah. Right. But now they have referrals coming at the yin yang. They're known throughout the community. Everybody loves them. They sponsor the hole-in-one tournament at the giant golf thing every year. Yeah. And so to them, this is the system, go build it. But they forgot how they got there. And then they sign up a couple of franchisees, and they don't even know what to tell them. So in an ideal world, they hire somebody like us, and we come in and say, okay, what is an average customer worth? How do they come in? What are they looking for? Let's figure out the best way to target them based on, do we have to plant the idea they have a problem, or do they already have a problem? How do we reach them to then get in front of the right eyeballs to generate sales? And we have a whole life cycle you can find on our website that talks through like how we look from the foundation all the way through advertising low hanging fruit strategies. But ultimately, how we get somebody there and how we keep them as a repeat customer, a different part of a strategy that needs to be thought of. If it's a one and done drain cleaning, I'm sorry, maybe we should have figured out a way to also install, do other plumbing activities if you want some recurring revenue, because that's a tough sale to try to only find the person that needs to clean the drain. But if you're talking about, maybe an electrician, well, yeah, I have a problem because, that my circuit breaker keeps blowing. Well, that's a problem. Let's buy Google ads. I need an electrician. But if we get to, okay, it's slow time of year, or we just had a storm like we just did last night in Michigan, well, let's do some advertising. You want to prevent your power going out? I can sell you a generator. You didn't wake up today without power, but I'm reminding you might have a problem there. Or it's going to be hot this summer. Have you thought about a ceiling fan? Oh, yeah, that would be great. So different levels of advertising depend on where we're falling in that funnel. And then how do we stay in that retention mode? If they know I exist, how do I remarket to them to get existing business is pretty paramount as well.
Are you, in your position, you must spend an enormous amount of time with the franchisor, right? Is that the crux of it? Like, hey, like to your point, like these guys want to add another line of business, right? Let's call it the drain company, and we're gonna be the official IKEA plumbing installer, whatever the next thing that they could be doing. And you go in and you're then building this. The part that I noticed was the frustration on the franchisee side. Well, I want to do this right now. I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait for Jim to create, for the company to create ads and whatever else and do whatever. I want to just start doing it. And that's part of the danger, right? Is like you end up in this kind of world where you're, I'm restricted, but I'm doing this for you. They don't quite understand that there's 10 other franchisees who need the rules. Maybe one or two don't, but because you're in a franchise, you're in a franchise, and that's how it works. In other words, it's like what you said before. You can't start just making your own pizza, right? You just can't do it because it'll throw the whole thing off kilter, right? There's deliveries of the materials. We buy a certain amount, X, Y, Z, all that stuff. So it's a fascinating world. I don't think, in fact, I went through 3.5 years of marketing classes. And, I don't ever remember, other than a very deep dive on McDonald's, but it was much more kind of food related and how amazing they could be so consistent, right? It wasn't really about the fact that there are these huge companies inside of McDonald's that are huge franchisors of McDonald's. And in some cases they're, they're huge businesses unto themselves, or the Coca-Cola bottling companies and all, they're all kind of related as businesses, but they all work off the main brand. And I think it's really interesting for me to think, like, when I looked at your agency, I wonder if Jim has to have a lot of account people, does a lot of account servicing more than, let's say, if he were just handling local advertising, right? Which would, because you have, conceptually, you have a lot of bosses.
Yeah. So in the ideal world, we come in as the website expert for the franchise, and we're building out locally optimized sites for each location, working with corporate to determine the rule sets around that. And then we roll it out. How our engagement with the franchisee typically looks from that perspective is we have an onboarding call, even if we're just doing the website, to say, okay, this is what you're getting. This is what it's going to look like. Where do you operate? I need your about us picture. Tell me your bio. Do you offer duct cleaning for 8-inch ducts in addition to 6-inch ducts or not? Because a lot of times franchisees may not take on the full offering as they start out or something along those lines. There's more equipment needed as they grow up. So we built in that level of, we may not do commercial. We're only starting with residential or whatever that might be. So we onboard them then, and then we tell them about like our ads package that we've already pre-negotiated with corporate of what we would offer as a preferred vendor. Through that, we end up working with a lot of the franchisees. managing their ads in whatever we think that package should look like, their budget, their credit card put into the advertising platform. And we work with them on the results and what we see from a leads perspective and what the cost per lead is.
Is that the what I'm saying earlier where, let's say TikTok hits a month after your annual meeting with the franchisor about the plan for that particular year. And now you're confronted with, and I don't know if you have any advertisers who are really deep into TikTok or Instagram video, whatever at the time. But if you only had an annual meeting, right, you just missed it, and now you're going to be 12 months before you actually make some changes. Is this where kind of the speed of the internet has kind of thrown things off? Because you were doing, my assumption is prior to 99, right? It's direct mail, it's billboards, it's, a lot of local advertising that we've touched on, the yellow pages, right? Like, yep. I mean, my first ad campaign ever was a yellow pages ad campaign. And then from there, now in the present, right? I was again at American Media when Pinterest really kind of hit the board, and it looked like it was going to be the next big thing. It kind of fizzled, but it hit hard, and for some areas, it's really great, right? Pinterest to this day, really fabulous for certain businesses. Would you have gone back and said, hey, we got to address this? Or do you wait for the franchisee to kind of be like, hey, how come I'm not on such and such, whatever, TikTok or Pinterest or whatever?
So ideal world, we're probably, once we have ads running for the franchisee, we're meeting with the franchisee like quarterly to discuss those, because a couple $1,000s a month, best case scenario, things don't change often enough to have monthly calls.
Right.
But we have those boots on the ground. With corporate, we're probably having at least a structured monthly call and other unstructured engagements on at least a weekly basis. Right. So we're already planning for the future, not just having annual strategy calls of what happens next. But, our wheelhouse is service-based franchises. And so from that perspective, it's not as likely that the best low-hanging fruit for this smaller local operator is going to be something like TikTok advertising. It doesn't mean it can't be, but in most of our cases, we like to start from an advertising perspective with Google because somebody woke up today with a problem that they solve. Not all the cases, everybody's a little bit different. Yeah. So when you start talking about like the next Pinterest, well, again, it's got to be the right niche and fit, but obviously these platforms last for a reason. And if there's a way to leverage those as a cost-effective manner, we want to find the best way to do that for the system.
Talk to me a little bit about being a small, mid-size agency. And, to me, and I don't know how many current roster clients you have, but it sounds like to me, you could be doing a lot of meetings just with corporate, right? Like you guys are really working hard. It's a hard gig, right? Because you're dealing with that. You're doing the planning. You're obviously watching the reporting and whatever else is going on. You're talking to people like me about new technology and whatever else. And then you're having a monthly, you're doing a monthly meeting with all your clients. This is a lot of account work.
It's supposed to be. I mean, that's why we're an agency. So, it's the best insight we get in that same situation is from the franchisees when they're telling us boots on the ground type of information. When we figure out that buying, a specific competitor's name in the drain cleaning space is converting twice as well to actual sales as drain cleaning, well, we want to know that and leverage that for the rest. We want to share that with corporate. We want to tell them what's going on. We want to tell them because in a lot of cases, as they get larger, the more successful, I mean, this is one of the interesting conundrums with this market, I think, is everybody seems to focus on trying to help the guy that's struggling. Ironically, the guy that's struggling is probably not following the system in the first place and won't listen to you to follow the system. The guys that are being most successful, corporate tends to not even talk to and leaves alone for the most part, except at high end. And even that guy doesn't necessarily know what he's doing to make him more successful. And so that's where, going back to the first part of our conversation, I mean, in my opinion, the franchisor's job is to create a marketing systematic approach to marketing that will work for everybody always. So that, when the 10% of the bottom of the franchise isn't successful, it's not because the leads weren't correct. It's because they didn't answer their phone. They didn't go out and quote the job correct. They had the work me, I dare you attitude, which makes zero sense because they spent all this money investing in the franchise, but I see it all the time. And then if you look at the top 10% of the franchise, it's just the opposite. If I never built them a website and they didn't even have one, they would still be good because they're out there hustling in the street. They're talking to people. They're asking for referrals. They're doing it. But the system needs to be built in such a way that the average person with the average level of intellect, right, and the average skill set can be successful in buying and following the system, right? And so that's why the marketing system has to be that way. The top 10%, they're just going to knock it out of the park anyway. That's awesome. But we got to work with the franchisor to make sure their system
your job
achieves that goal.
Your job is to make that bell curve, right? The middle part of that bell curve is where you're really sitting, and you're saying, hey, if you do what you're supposed to be doing, my job at Turtle Hut is to get you to this baseline, and this is how much you're going to make it. Right. Maybe you're not going to be like Stan, who's the number one guy. And he's, like you said, he's involved with, every possible direction. Guys working 22 hours a day. Got it. He's different, but you're not going to be as bad as, let's say, the one who's really not following everything and is falling out of it. That's the key to the business. Right.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, you already know the answer to the question, but what's the best source for a lead?
Well, I mean, in your case,
in anyone's case, in any business,
referral,
best source, referral. So when people come to us and they say, well, I'm doing all these people that come in my door, I'm converting at 95%. And then the leads you get me, I'm only converting at 50%. Well, yeah, because their next door neighbor told them to hire you. You got a great reputation.
Right.
Ideally, you need us less and less and less to generate more new business because you're doing such a great job. They're talking about you in the community and referring you, and those close better, and you get better margin on them. I'm not going to tell you to stop getting referrals. That's perfect. But if you just opened up and you haven't had any clients, how are you going to get any referrals?
See, it's really it's the combo. It's that combo that I think must be very difficult for the franchisee, the standard franchisee to understand is. Sure, there's the referral is without question. The handover referral is got, if you have a fencing franchise and Fred's fence looks great, you walk over, Fred, who did this fence for you? Oh, the fence company. Oh, wonderful. And you set them up. But maybe you are, before Fred put that fence up, you're looking at putting a fence up. And you're looking at advertising, you're looking, you're doing some searches at home, you're looking at photos, your better half is saying, this is the fence I want. And so there's some branding element to it, but then there's also the referral element to it. And then there's the Turtle Hut. We've got this covered for you. So when Craig's wife gets mad enough at him that the fence needs to be replaced, he's in his car sitting in the parking lot. He can go and say, I got to get this thing fixed super fast. I'm going to do a quick Google search, and there's the fence franchise. Yeah. And I get the guy over there, and I'm ready to go. So it could be a combination of any.
Yeah. Right? But ideally you did that Google of it, and I'm Bob's Fence Company, and I come do an amazing job for you. And then next week somebody sees it and again saying, that was who did that, Bob. And then at that point, Bob's got the sale.
Yeah, he's got the sale. Yeah.
He's not even getting 3 quoted. Right. But if you find somebody out of nowhere, you have no idea how good they do. You probably are 3 quoting. You're looking for references, all these other aspects that are part of that sales process. That if the franchisee isn't good at the sales process, then the leads aren't going to convert as well because they were a hot lead, but not far enough through that process of a referral. They're just you come in at the same common denominator. So hopefully the franchisor has taught them some sales strategies, some ways to differentiate themselves from the competitor, some follow-up methods, some proven practices on how to go ahead and sell that. Not just, okay, here's the lead, what do you do with it? And again, different systems, it's not like this. We're not talking today about if I were looking for a franchise, what I'd be looking for.
Yeah, right.
Ultimately, if I were looking for a franchise, I want them to teach me how to sell. I mean, if I go back to the pizza company, and part of the reason we didn't succeed is they didn't have a marketing strategy. It was, here's the system, here's our dough, here's our sauce, go sell it. Okay, well, when sales are down, what do we do? The best answer we ever got was you go door to door and put hangers on the door. That's our corporate strategy. And oh, by the way, my ad fund, went to fund the owner's motorcycle racing team. Do you know how much value that got me 60 miles away from where he races? Zero.
Zero.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so there was no advertising strategy. There was no marketing strategy. It was, build it, they will come. Well, that's not true. In a lot of businesses, it's not true. So you need to have that strategy.
Have you ever fired a client, Jim? Have you ever been like, you know what? I'm not interested. I'm not, you know what? This is not working. Has it ever come to that for you?
I like everybody.
Yeah, I know you have a very nice personality. I know that part of it. You talked to me for 20 minutes.
At the end of the day, I mean, you have to. There's fits that work and not.
Yeah.
And whether it's a franchise client that hopefully we can identify well before you would get to the point of firing. It's just the opposite of, is this going to be a good fit? Are we culturally aligned? No different if you walk in my door and say, can you help me sell franchises? I'm going to say, yeah, by helping your franchisees be more successful. I mean, yes, we do friend dev work. I love to help them, but I'm only going to help them if I know they're doing the right things in the first place. I have no interest in helping somebody sell more franchises that is not going to be a fully vetted marketing strategy, and the person's not getting everything they think they might be getting. So
it's interesting, I know a lot of bigger ad agency people, right, who work for these huge holding companies, and you go out, you get to know them, you sit down, and they just put their head, their head in their hand, and like, God, I wish I'd get rid of this company, but it's their bread and butter. When I talk to a small agency owner, it comes to, you've got other business, obviously you guys work at top capacity and all that stuff. Would there be a case where you're like, you know what, this is just not, we're not a fit. I don't see us moving forward together. I'm always fascinated by that, because I do know an agency. I know an agency well who goes out of their way to kind of say like, hey, you know what, we're not the right agency for you. And I'm always fascinated by that. But
we would. I don't want to pat small agencies in the back or entrepreneurs, but I think, I learned a long time ago, why are you doing it? And my why is I love helping small businesses grow, which is how I got into internet marketing, why I wake up every day. And what's even more unique about the franchise space is I can do it more systematically, more cost effective for more small businesses than if I take on any one individual. So the why is, that's why I do it every day. But if who we're trying to help isn't really trying to solve that problem, then that's not who we want to be working with, whether it's the business owner themselves or if it's the franchisor, right? And what their vision is. Fortunately, I think most franchise systems, they really do want the success of their franchisees. It's not like they just tried to sell them a franchise and run. They want it. They really do. They love the people that are part of the system, and they want to do everything they can to help them. Unfortunately, sometimes without the thoughtful strategic approach to marketing, they're a little struggling sometimes of how to do that in this particular application. But their clients are their franchisees, and not every customer is always going to be happy. It's funny how there's this potential adversarial relationship between the Z and the Zor, and that's going to happen. It's sometimes Dad's gonna scold you because you did it a little bit wrong. And you're like, I don't really want to do the work today, Dad. There's two aspects of that hopefully a good system understands how to, manage that internally as well. We get a lot of insight.
Do the Z's for the most part have access to you and the agency, or is it just the Zors? How does that work?
The agency specifically, or me?
Well, the agency.
Okay. I was going to say, I don't have time to talk to every franchisee you work with. I unfortunately, I wish I could, but occasionally if something interesting enough comes up from our account management team through me, I actually love to pick up the phone and talk to the Z, because we can learn so much from them. It's not usually a complaint that makes it to me. We have better systems for that than me solving it. I wouldn't know the nuance of, this happened here, whatever else. My team should be able to solve that. But if they come up with a great strategy idea, I want to talk to them about it. What are they doing internally? What are they doing? How do I push that back to the Zor? Because I can get better attention. So I'll get involved there. I'll get involved there for sure.
Well, that's the best advertising you can do, is having access to, when, and again, when necessary. I think that's important, because you want to trust your account team, and I'm sure you do. But there are times where, the boss can come in and learn. I think that was that was kind of my first experience with, I remember very clearly having a couple of big conference room meetings, and we would, luckily had some interns. And I remember at least one, in fact, one of our bigger ideas came directly from an intern, and it was that we were sitting there and the senior management, we were all thinking, oh, we know everything. And then this kind of intern was like, hey, here's what I would do. And I was like, oh, wow, that's a really great idea. So it's kind of the same flow, like talking to the franchisee, right? And them telling you something, and you're like, oh, wow, I didn't think of it. Really very smart. So I'm going to leave it there, Mr. Turtle Hut. And I think what we'll do is I'd like to bring you back on. I wanted to just talk a little bit more, and I know Beth is interested in this as a topic. She left orders for me. Is we want to talk to small and mid-size agency owners, and we want to do it kind of in a group setting. So we'd love to, extend this invite and say, hey, let's get a group of these smaller agencies together from around the country. I mean, very diverse group, right? Some in the travel space, some in the franchise space, some in general, some maybe just, media side. I think it'll be I think you'd be a fun addition to it. I want to thank you for, spending a better part of like an hour here with me, going over everything from our, tornadoes earlier and whatever else we were talking about, all the way to the franchisee. And now I'm going to be able to, I don't think I've ever heard anybody describe it as Z and Zor. So I'm going to be stealing those from you, Jim. I want you to know that. It's added to my lexicon.
I wish I could trademark them. It wasn't my idea.
Well, I will see you, buddy. I appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us on the Media SHŌ.
Happy to. Thank you.
All right.